and welcome to the Two Unlikely Christians podcast. I'm comedian and lifelong recovering moron, Pat McCool, and all the way across the pond to London, England, to renowned and esteemed psychotherapist and addiction specialist, a man with royal blood coursing through his veins, who is presently 30,165,132nd in line to the British throne, Richard Turrell.
Hello, Pat. Yeah, I didn't know you was talking about us first. I thought maybe we had a third person on the call.
No, that's you, man.
That's me.
I think like 30 million in line. If a plague ever hits Britain, you got to fly to Mississippi. Really, we got to get you and Shireen on a plane. If you survive the plague and it knocks out those 30 million in front of you, we could be doing the podcast in Balmoral Castle. How cool would that be?
Yeah, that would be something, man. Although if there's a plague, maybe, it might be better if I come to Mississippi. I come and hide out amongst the typhoons and the trailers for safety.
That's what I said. You're gonna come over here. We'll do the moonshine and eat the jerky. We might figure out how to hunt or something while you're here.
Yeah. AR-15s.
Yeah. The AR-50. We'll get us a couple of AR-15s and we'll go shooting, man. And then you'll be, you'll have a little experience, a little military experience. So when you go back and assume the throne, you can ride on your military experience. So, how did the preparation for the wedding? You went shopping for the suit? Did you find?
Yeah, got the suit. Got the suit today. Went to look at rings. Got some shoes. Got a shirt. Yeah, man, it's all happening.
I'm feeling like you didn't follow my advice on Naughty Holder.
No. I didn't. I've got to be honest with you. Yeah.
For those of you that are listening, I suggested that he go with a bold look, and I picked out Naughty Holder, which was the lead singer of the rock band Slade from the late 60s, early 70s. Now, Slade was a great group. They wrote Come On, Feel the Noise, My Mama, We're All Crazy Now, Quiet Riot covered those, but Slade actually did it. And Naughty Holder was the lead singer, and he had the 70s look that I'm thinking Richard could bring back if he would be bold enough to in the wedding. We got some plaid, we got bell bottoms, we got big lapels.
I've got to say, there is a slight nod to Naughty Holder, right? In that my suit has a very faint check in it. So your advice, your suggestions, your almost fatherly guidance, yeah. And I'm always looking for a father figure, Pat. You know what I mean? Like it didn't land on deaf ears. So I just, I want to acknowledge that. You have authority to speak into my life. And,
my heart is swelling. I'm making an impact, and that's all I'm trying to do.
Always, Pat. Always making an impact, man.
Just gotta settle it in there. I like making a difference, and you're the guy. So that's excellent. I can't wait to see the wedding pictures. So, without further ado, let's get to our. Were you about to say something?
No.
Let's get to our topic today. Our topic today is actually one of my favorite subjects, which is laughter, which comes easy for me because one of my life's main mottos is I'm not giving up immaturity without a fight. So it comes easy to me. But what we're going to do is I want to read this article that was posted, this very interesting, that was posted by a good friend of mine, Dr. Beverly Smallwood. Now, Dr. Beverly Smallwood is a psychologist, well-known psychologist here in Hattiesburg. I only hang out with really well-known. She's a bit of a local celebrity here. She's also the author of the book on grief, This Was Not Supposed to Happen to Me, 10 Make or Break Choices When Life Steals Your Dreams and Rocks Your World. And she's somebody who has had her world rocked. And she is the epitome of, if someone asked me, give me an example of a follower of Jesus Christ and how you're supposed to do it, I would take you and introduce you to Dr. Beverly Smallwood. She never has a bad word to say to anybody. I've never seen her angry. You know, unlike somebody like myself, I try to be a good follower of Jesus, but I can lose it and go off on you in a, in a New York second. And then I'll go back and ask for forgiveness and probably even apologize to the person that I go off on. But this person, Beverly Smallwood, is just Dr. Beverly Smallwood is just an encourager, a lifter upper. And she's writing a book on anger. And I'd love to have her on to discuss it when it comes out. But anyway, I just wanted to give her credit for posting this particular article. But let me read this, and I find this very interesting. All right, it was an article written in Your Minds on Facebook, and it says, in Israel, scientists conducted a remarkable study. A single drop of a participant's blood was placed under a microscope and projected on a screen. What they saw was captivating. Bacteria slowly moving around, and macrophages, am I pronouncing that right?
I think so, yeah.
Macrophages, the cleanup crew of the blood, was just lying dormant. The bacteria were wandering freely as if on a peaceful evening stroll. The macrophages, fast asleep, ignoring their job entirely. Then something unexpected happened. The participant was shown a funny movie, and as their mood lifted, the macrophages suddenly woke up. One of them rolled over to a nearby bacterium and started devouring it with real enthusiasm. This wasn't lunchtime. This was science. So that cleanup crew in the blood that devours the bacteria woke up and just started cleaning out the blood and started getting the bacterium out. And the takeaway there was our mood directly influences our immune cells. Here's the twist. The blood sample had been separated from the participant and was in a different room. Somehow the change in the participant's emotional state affected the blood at a distance. When researchers switched to horror film clips, the opposite happened. The bacteria became energized, multiplied rapidly, and even started attacking the macrophages, forcing them to retreat. Takeaway, the state of our consciousness plays a critical role in maintaining our inner ecosystem. And it doesn't stop with us. Since our relatives share our bloodline, our emotional states can influence their immune systems too, even across continents. This is what some call family immunity. A watchmaker once shared a story. Whenever his left index finger would start twitching, making his delicate work impossible, he wouldn't massage it or take supplements. He'd call his mother thousands of kilometers away and say, "Mom, you're worrying again. Stop it. I can't work like this." Even mild maternal anxiety was enough to affect his physiology. And the takeaway, the old saying, "It's my life, we'll do what I want," is outdated. Our mental state impacts not just our health, but the well-being of those we love. So, find ways to cultivate joy, laughter, and inner harmony, not just for yourself, but for your entire immune tribe. P.S. This reminds us of Norman Cousins, who famously healed from a terminal illness through laughter. His story, told in Anatomy of Illness, 1976, showed that positive emotions can activate the body's healing systems. Turns out, laughter is the best medicine isn't just a saying, it's physiology. What do you make of that, Richard? And do you... Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating bit of research. Yeah, I mean, that idea that laughter is the best medicine is, it kind of backs that up, doesn't it? I mean, what I would say in terms of the family, like the links between like family members, we know about things like intergenerational trauma. We know that what happens in another generation can impact on generation beneath them, and then that gets carried on to the generation between them. So sometimes I think something I'll do with clients is do what's called a genogram, where you map out kind of like a family tree, and then you'll see patterns of mental illness, addiction, physical illness, relationship struggles, like divorce, adultery, all of those kind of things. You'll see those kind of replicated again and again through the generations, and this adds another like angle to explain that. It's like if family members can impact each other in this very biological, scientific way, then it kind of adds another layer of understanding to how these patterns play out, over and over. So I think it's fascinating. But I mean, I guess the takeaway really for like us as individuals and certainly as like clinicians working with people trying to, find their way out of difficult mental states or difficult patterns of behaviour is actually just how important laughter is. So I know that when someone is able to laugh at, like say someone has a personality disorder would be a good idea, a good example. Like when you start to understand the symptoms of that and the thoughts, feelings, behaviours that come with that as coming from this, out of this condition or this diagnosis or whatever you want to call it, and to be able to start to find humour in that and to laugh at that, like to, rather than it being a very serious, heavy, difficult thing to live with, there can be real healing in that. It just allows one a bit of freedom. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, like I say, fascinating bit of research. She sounds like a fascinating lady. I'd love to meet her sometime, Pat. Yeah, laughter's really important, basically, I guess, in a nutshell.
Yeah, and you reminded me of something when you were talking about, because just like with my wife, and when we've gone through struggles, our last episode was on struggles. We just always laugh. I mean, at the end of like whatever carnage or whatever something happened, at the end of the day, we'd just sit down, look at the absurdity. One in our case comes from trusting God. If you're trusting in God and trusting in Jesus, you always feel like you have this safety net around you. So maybe that's where it comes from, where we can just have that laughter. But I remember one time her mother said, "I have never heard anybody laugh like you guys. Y'all are no matter what the circumstances." Now, part of it, is I'm somewhat of a lifelong fool, and like I said, I'm not giving up immaturity without a fight. But my wife just sees the humor and everything, and it just changes, and it just lifts your spirits. By the same token, if I wake up in the morning and Gwen is yelling at the dogs, which is easy to do because we have the most obnoxious dogs in the neighborhood, if she's in a bad mood about something, it kind of affects me. The whole atmosphere kind of gets a little grumbly up there. So I think a lot of that has a lot to do with what you're talking about. When I read this, I immediately thought of you. I wondered if Richard uses this, kind of in his practice. It turns out you kind of do, maybe you're not stating it that way, but in a different way. So I thought, what's the clinical uh, application to laughter and seeking out laughter and joy? And also there's a personal, and then there's also a biblical, which I'm going to give some scriptures when we finish. But in the personal, that guy at the end of the article was talking about healing from a terminal illness. I don't know if that I don't know the particulars on that and the veracity of it, but I remember once going to a meeting when I was an executive in the insurance business, and I was sick. I had some kind of Hong Kong whammy. I mean, I'm coughing. I'm just really feeling horrible, but I had to go to the meeting. That is. So I get there the first day, I'm very sick. Goes through to the second day, I'm sick all through the day. In the evening, we had entertainment, and we had a comedian named Jerry Farber, Southern comedian. And I went and started watching, and this guy was great. And he just killed, and I laughed so hard. And I walked out of the meeting and went back to my room, and I kid you not, but I was completely healed. I mean, even the cough was gone. It wasn't just a mood change. I went to sleep that night. I wasn't sweating anymore. I didn't have a fever, but I had literally laughed my way out of whatever illness or malady that I had. So that's real. That can really happen. I'm not saying you can just laugh your way out of curing illnesses, but that happened with me for sure. I remember a woman after a show one night came up, and she was telling me that she loved the show and laughed, blah blah blah, but she said her husband had been sick for a long time, and she said he didn't want to come, but she said, "Hey, let's go to the comedy show. Let's go to the comedy show." And she said he laughed so hard that he's had a smile on his face, and he's standing there just being. She said, "Look at him." She said he's not smiled in months, and now he's got a big smile on his face and seems to be, in a much better mood. So I'm thinking there's a lot to, laughing, and not just that, but having the joyful attitude. It seems like in our personal lives, it can make an awful lot of difference. But it's just making a choice, of looking at the absurdity. You said something a minute ago about I can't remember what you said, but it was like noticing the humor in things as opposed to noticing. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, look, so you can, like, what I might do when it's appropriate, if I like working with someone, is you can be a little bit playful, you can be a little bit jokey, then you can help people notice that actually, when a little bit of humour is allowed into the room, then it can shift mood state. It can be a distraction. But and also play is like a really important part of therapy. Like learning that people help. Excuse me, learning to help people play, laugh, joke. There's something that happens within that kind of free child, spontaneous, playful, joyful state that can be very healing. And I guess on like a personal note, like whilst when we sit together, Pat, like obviously you see like a kind of very hopefully quite kind of righteous and professional and knowledgeable, kind man. Whilst this may come as some surprise to you and anyone that's listening to us, like I'm actually not the easiest person to live with, right? And I've got some defects and some shortcomings, and some areas that I was struggling, and sometimes me and my other half and Shireen will be like working towards taking some serious steps down the road towards an argument, and then we just laugh about it. Something will happen and it makes us laugh, and it just all of a sudden, like nothing, whatever it is we're arguing about, who said what, and like, who misunderstood this and who did that, and what did you mean by that, and why did you say it? It all just seems so much less important. In fact, earlier this week, we were like, on our way to a bit of a bicker or whatever. And I was so het up with what I felt like I needed to say, what she needed to understand. But I was eating my cornflakes, right? And I was that consumed that I really needed to say this thing that I tried to say with a mouthful of cornflakes, and all this milk and cornflakes sprayed out, and we both just cracked up laughing, and then that was that. And it's like, look, I'm sorry, babe, and yeah, it's a powerful and important thing. I never knew about it from that perspective, kind of like deep microscopic level that research, evidences. But yeah, it's such an important thing. It's such an important part of life, isn't it? To be able to laugh.
Maybe something that you think about, as you go along. I mean, I know, I joke with you about you're just now starting to get married. I've been married 35 years. I wear that like a badge of honor because I messed up
Yeah,
everything.
like a medal.
Married.
Yeah,
What's that?
like you wear it like a medal, don't you? Like
Oh
you get
yeah,
your medals.
it's around. Yeah, a matter of fact, I would have a lanyard. Because to me, I always, if you notice somebody with a lanyard, you feel like they're official. I'd have a lanyard, married 35 years, didn't mess that up. I tell people all the time. Probably when you and I met, yeah, I mean. That goes, man. Yeah, I've been married before I started telling you about all of the bullets flying and and all of the crimes. I preface it with been married 35 years. So good.
And actually, your book, like what you do is you find humour in actually what was actually a very dark and disturbing turn of events, right? Like kind of like serious drug use, intravenous drug use, near-death experiences, being shot at, being incarcerated, like staring down the barrel of like a long, long sentences in prison. Because you guys, you like to, you don't mess about. Like when you lock people up for a long time. We over here we look at the kind of sentences that people get handed in America, and it's like like you'll sentence people to 150 years in prison. I don't know why, but like, it's like you really go all out, right? So, but anyway, so you're staring down the barrel. It's a pretty. Your book could have been written as it's like a tragedy, but actually you make it. You find the humour in it, and I think that is, it's actually really beautiful. As I sit here and think about it now, Pat, like it's a beautiful thing you do, and it's a real gift. And actually, like to be able to make people laugh, and actually, I know that you've put an immense amount of work, and you went through a lot in order to forge a career in which you make people laugh. And that's the for however like worthy the work I do might seem. Actually, the work that you do is incredibly important as well. So I really want to kind of take my hat off to you for that.
But I think it's it's something that comes natural to both of us in what we do. But it may be something you think about. So look, I just see the humor. I stand in line where everybody's, we're standing at the grocery store, and the elderly woman is writing a check for the pack of chapstick, and everybody's getting irritated, because they're being held up. I'm just back there laughing. I'm typing it into my phone about, okay, there's a comedy bit there, and you kind of see the funny. You're talking about when you and Shireen getting married, not just trying to give you marital advice, but again, 35 years, and it's something I didn't mess up. When we first got married, Richard, just keep this in mind, we fought like cats and dogs for the first few years. There was jockeying for position. So when you're coming at it and you've got these internal things inside of you that are built up, whatever it is, if it's rejection, my wife had been married once before. In the back of her mind, I'm going to do the same thing
Yeah, sure.
that guy did. We talked about in my last thing, getting dumped, even though I was 18 or 19 and being rejected, I'm thinking, okay, surely this is coming. So you've got maybe some kind of rage. It's just like if you're shoveling cornflakes in, but by gosh, you have a point you have to make. And it's important to get it out. And you could have made that point, and then it builds onto something else, because then you start name calling, and then a couple hours later you're trying to figure out what started the argument to start with. I mean, we'd have arguments with my wife after a few years. I'm like, you know what? I am not. I've had enough. This is what I'm talking about right here, and I'm trying to make the whole issue about what she just said, which was so far disconnected from whatever the original thing was about. But the point is, it's jockeying for position. And that's what we were doing. I mean, we fought like cats and dogs. I mean, plastic ketchup bottle, going through the air once. I was just like, we joke now about we separated, we separated so many times, but the separations only lasted like 30 minutes because we just went to different rooms. I've had it. You know what? I've had enough of this. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I've had 30 minutes left. I don't even know what I was mad about. So as time went by, when we started growing together, and just a little side note off of the topic we're talking about, I used to notice, as mad as I'd get at my wife or she would get mad at me, I would notice that when I got up in the morning, my wife was always putting me first. Now, I'm not one of these knuckle dragger guys that like, well, I expect my wife. I didn't really expect anything. I told you I married my wife because she was the best looking woman that was giving me the time of day, so I didn't have any expectations. I want you to be like my mother, or I want you to be like this. But I would notice I always had clothes, or I had this, or I had that. She was just always thinking, she's always putting me first. She gets up, even if she's mad at me, she's making sure my needs are met. And then I started doing the same thing. We would travel to these football games. I'd spend all this money to go watch Southern Miss play Georgia, and thinking that was the thing to do. And I started noticing she doesn't really like doing this, but she's just doing it for me. And then the roles got reversed. Mainly the only times we've had an argument, and probably in the last 20 years, 15, 20 years, is when I'm not happy that she's not happy about something. So the point is, it's just like my life's things. I'm making her happy. And if she's the person that she is, she's going to do the same thing. And you might remember that in marriage, as you and Shireen are going on, you're going to have jockeying for position. That is just normal. You've come through life, and there's always that kind of, but after the years go by and day after day, and you know what kind of person you have, that's how you just keep growing together and growing together and growing together. But what you guys just did, I'm not trying to be the analyst here because you're the psychotherapist, but think about what you just did. You had a big fight, and then you turned around and it turned into a big laugh with you looking like you had rabies with foam coming out of your nose. I would like to have seen that too.
Yeah, I bet you were. Another just thing that pings into my head about humour is so as you know, like I'm a recovering crack addict and heroin addict, right? And there's some, that's not a lifestyle choice, right? Which it comes without some challenges and some difficulties, right? And and I have a lot of friends in my recovery circle, the 12-step group, the 12-step fellowship that I'm a member of, and who have had similar experiences, and actually you find like a thread of humour in it, and there's a couple of really common ones. One is like when you've smoked so much crack, right, that you're really paranoid and basically psychotic, right, and you're kind of peering out, through the crack in the blinds, right, and like looking for the SWAT team that are going to come through the door, right, like after you and you're like $100 worth of crack cocaine, yeah. So like they've launched a full operation, and like you can't look, you have to look really carefully because then if you need to be able to see them, but if you move too much, then they'll be able to see you, and there's no one there anyway, right? And you end up kind of hiding in the wardrobe. Um, and the other is like when you're waiting on some corner, and you've called. We don't have open air drug markets as much as you guys have over here, although we have that in some parts of London and places like that. But you'll call the dealer and he says, I'll be there in 5 minutes, and you call him 10 minutes later and he says, I'll be there in 5 minutes, and sometimes you might be there for like 3 hours, do you know what I mean? And he's always 5 minutes away, right? And then you're there and you're cursing him, and this guy, man, when he gets here, I'm going to tell him, and I'm never going to buy off this guy again. And then he comes, and then because he's there with your drugs, like he's now your best friend. You know what I mean? And you're like, yes, man, safe, good to see you, man. I love your new trainers. You look great, man. Nice car, And then he's your best friend, and then you go off and you do the same thing again. The next day or like 2 hours later, right? But the truth of it is that it's funny to talk about it like that, but actually it's a way of like making peace with what you've gone through, right? Because actually what you're talking about is like putting yourself into a state of psychosis over and over again and living in terror, right? Like which you voluntarily put yourself into, and then you do it again the next day, which is mad, right? Like and extremely traumatic, right? And then also, and waiting on the street corner for some guy who couldn't care less about you, who's actually like actively profiting off of your distress and the damage that you're causing to yourself and the kids around you. And this guy has got so much power over you. You know what I mean? He's got so much power over you. Like you're like, it's a desperate place to be, right? Just getting treated like, essentially getting treated like a piece of trash on the sidewalk, right? But the humour, developing that narrative around it, actually, it's a way of making peace with having gone through like some awful things, and yeah. So as we sit here, like it's like, oh yeah, like actually, some of these are fresh thoughts on the back of that article, Pat. It's like, oh, actually, yeah, that's part of the power of humour as well, is to make peace with things that are actually awful.
I couldn't help but bust out laughing because I literally did. The blinds are down. You're looking through, and every car that comes by uh, is it's the narcotics squad. And they're going to start surrounding the house. And they don't know, you're in there, some little penny ante guy doing drugs, but you're just certain at any moment. I didn't really think about that, but I guess that's what it was, psychosis. I did the same thing. I remember getting up, me and my friend get up and look through the window, and you'd stare down the window. Wait, it's a car, it's a car. So it's funny hearing you had to do the same thing, but yeah, I think you're exactly right. That's why this kind of jumped into my head. It's a way of looking at things and not just coping. I don't think it's just saying, hey, go out and watch a comedian every day. I think it's just everyday stuff, seeing the absurdity, seeing the humor, but learning how to laugh at yourself. I laugh at myself all the time. Like sometimes I introduce myself as a recovering moron or an idiot because I just fashion myself as that. I'm like, it's just amazing I made it this far. But it's being able to look back in a humorous way. And what you just said, yeah, that is kind of profound looking back. And that's what I was wondering how it could be used in the clinical sense and to somebody, because everybody the people that you're talking to, if they look back at how desperately they needed the drugs and things, what you were talking about, the drug dealer coming up, I know exactly what you're talking about. Looking back on it, it is kind of humorous and how foolish that you were acting. So that's a very good point. So there's, like I said, there's the clinical aspect, which you talked about, and then the personal. I didn't really think about that. It's just kind of, it's looking at things in a humorous and funny way, because I can assure you that it's out there. Even arguments in marriage, everyone with me and my wife were still, if we had a really bad argument, we will go back something 20 years later and we'll joke, we'll remember the funny part about it. Oh, like you remember the time that I was so mad I drove to Louisiana to the football game by myself, so that's a good illustration. And to close, it's not just the clinical and the personal, but God wanted us to laugh. There are literally 25 references in the Bible, scriptures, that have laughter in it. And the first one is Proverbs 17:22. Everyone's heard, a cheerful heart is a good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up bones. There's another translation that laughter doeth good like a medicine. And so it does. I mean, the Bible is literally telling us about laughter and that God gave us that. Psalm 126:2. Then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with shouts of joy. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. Luke 6:21. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. That's God talking to us, telling us laughter is important. Uh, Proverbs 31:25. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. What he's pointing out here is someone that is laughing because they don't have fear of the future. So there is a biblical aspect to this too. Part of what gives me the peace, and we're enduring my wife and our struggles, when it came right down to it, that we laugh because we do know that we have the peace of God. We know how everything ends, and our faith is in Jesus. So that really, that is the buffer at the bottom, that God gave us laughter, used that laughter, and he gave us peace. And he also says I can't think of what the name of the verse is, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees that his day is coming. So God is laughing. God himself laughs, gave us laughter, and we should use it. I joke a lot of times that I think God gathers Peter and Gabriel around and just watches me at times, just to get a kick out of whatever foolish thing that I'm doing at the time. But it's literally saying in the Bible, God laughs. God gave us laughter. He emphasizes it. And let's end with my favorite, Job 8:21. He will fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with shouting. God's telling us he will fill us with laughter. It's a gift that he gave us. And I just think if people would focus on that, and you brought some very interesting things that from what you were talking about on how people can utilize that. It's not just going to see a comedian, watch a movie or something like that. Although it is things we've discussed in the past, where you get up in the morning and you turn on politics, or you go on social media and you scroll through and you look at something that's wanting to make you want to punch a friend in the face, as opposed to clipping past that and just looking at something funny and something something the absurdity of life. Focus on funny, focus on laughter. But that is a very interesting article. It does seem to make a huge difference, not just with your spirit, not just with your mood, but also with your health. Any final thoughts before you go downstairs and and tell Shireen that you're finished spending time with P-Rat.
No, man, you covered it all beautifully, Pat.
All right, my man. Well, go back downstairs, and hopefully it's going to be a few days before the cornflakes start coming out of your mouth. Again, you're getting married. It's an emotional time. It's going to happen. So let's try to remember the humor part. And for everyone out there, maybe put this part of your thought process. Try to laugh. Try to find humor, and try to keep your heart merry. So, well, good talking to you, Rich, and God bless everybody out there, and we will see you all next time.
Lovely. Nice one, Pat. God bless you, and God bless everyone listening. Thank you.